I'm a communications guy, so I just,
You keep talking. All right. Well, good. So I'll talk slow and I've got to go into details.
Welcome, everyone, to the February 2024 edition of The Impact, a sustainable CT podcast. For your edification, your enlightenment, and your entertainment, too. I'm Jim Hunt, Communications Manager at Sustainable CT, so if you're looking for someone to blame for this podcast, well, you can blame me. But remember, this is never a one-way conversation. We always want to hear from you for our edification and enlightenment. Drop us a note, won't you, to info@sustainablect.org. The Impact is brought to you in part by the Connecticut Green Bank. The Connecticut Green Bank confronts climate change by increasing and accelerating investment into Connecticut's green economy to create more resilient, healthier, and equitable communities. And we are oh so glad they do. Visit them at ctgreenbank.com. Remember, Sustainable CT is independently funded. We don't have a magical rainbow unicorn money tree, no sir, but you can be a Sustainable CT sponsor. Find out how at sustainablect.org. What a pleasure it is to be joined today by Mike Purcaro, Town Administrator for the lovely town of Vernon, Connecticut. Vernon registered with Sustainable CT way back in 2018. They jumped right to silver in 2019 with astonishing numbers, 800 points. They followed that up with a renewal of silver certification in 2022. Again, with a stellar performance on points. I want to come back to Vernon's certification record in just a minute because it truly is remarkable. But first, let's continue to introduce our good friend Mike Purcaro because he's truly remarkable as well. Mike did his undergraduate work at Quinnipiac University in Hamden, Connecticut. Go Bobcats. That's right. And went on to receive a master's degree in business administration from RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic, where hockey is king. Go Puckmen. Mike's been working with the town of Vernon for 20 years, or nearly 20 years, starting as the town's emergency and risk management director in '04, and then as director of business and finance for 5 years, and since 2017 as town administrator. And that's a heck of a record. And before all that, he did so many important things in the area of public health administration that are too numerous to mention, but including a stint as communications manager. How about that? And at the Connecticut Department of Public Health. So welcome, Mike, my fellow communications manager. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Jim, for that introduction. One of the best introductions I've ever had. Thank you.
I also wanted to point out that you've recently joined our board of directors.
Very proud to join the board of directors. In essence, it's a reflection of my commitment and my passion for the work and the journey. Really, it's been a journey, and that's what I look forward to sharing with all of your listeners today, all of our listeners today. Now that I'm on the board, I can say that,
yeah.
And hopefully that'll help inspire others to take on the challenges and hopefully reap the same rewards that we've had here in Vernon.
Yeah, so now you can certainly retire having reached that pinnacle. But I do want to sincerely thank you for that service too, because it means the world to us to have someone of your stature and experience generously contributing his time to our organization. So that's wonderful. Let's get to some questions.
Sure.
Because that's why we're here. I mentioned at the intro that Vernon had a remarkable certification record, and holy mackerel, that's kind of an understatement because in 2022, Vernon was awarded points for 42 separate sustainability actions, which is damned impressive in itself. But of those 42 actions, almost half of them, 20 of them, were what we call success stories. And now, I'm not sure, frankly, if we keep internal data on this, but I've got to believe that's about as good as it gets. And for those who out there in podcast land who may not know, a success story is a designation a town will receive when an action is of high enough caliber or quality that we're suggesting other towns should imitate or emulate the practice. And I got to say, we're pretty stingy with that designation. We don't hand those out very often, and the performance and documentation have to be really good. And a town might get a handful of these in any given certification cycle, 3 or 4, but 20, that's pretty unheard of. I'll wager that every one of Vernon's actions was worthy of success story designation. We just couldn't say that because it would be really, I don't know, discouraging to other towns. You've raised the bar so high. I know that Sean Gately, the economic development director in Vernon, has been a real force behind sustainable CT certification. What can you say about his efforts, the efforts of others in town, to really push this forward? What do you think has been behind their motivation, and yours, for that matter, to achieve so much in this program?
I'm so glad you mentioned the people behind the process, because the sustainable effort is truly a team effort. I'm going to say it several more times throughout this interview. I'm just warning you up front, Jim, because
all right. Go for
it literally takes a small army or more for this to be a truly successful process, a truly meaningful and valuable process, and no pun intended, but for it to be a sustainable process. You want your sustainable certification to be sustainable. And the only way you're going to do that is if you fully integrate it into the people, the processes, the systems, and the culture of your community and your organization. So I'm glad you mentioned Sean. Sean was the main point and driver when we started this journey years ago. And I would certainly recommend that any community that's interested in pursuing a certification and or recertification, you definitely need to have a point person organizing, coordinating your organization's efforts. That, to me, has been a critical component to our success. I would strongly encourage it. I do strongly encourage it when I talk to my counterparts in other communities as a starting point. But beyond Sean, he was extraordinarily effective. And he had the support of, obviously, the mayor, our council, which is our legislative body, and leadership, elected leaders, as well as the senior executives of the town behind him. And that's, I think, an equally critical important, because you could assign someone to do it, but if you don't have from top down and from the bottom up the support and the direction and the leadership to say, this is something we want to do, we need to do, we're going to put the resources behind it, you're kind of just going to be spinning wheels and wasting time. So you really need to make sure that this is something that everyone is going to get behind. And it starts from the top down, from your mayor or your chief elected official, your legislative body, and your senior executives to say, yeah, we're going to do this, and then begin the process. I'm also glad, Jim, that, I appreciate the comments and the recognition for all the work we did in the points, but I'm so glad you said, it could be overwhelming for someone hearing this podcast to say, oh my God, I got to get 800 points. And we did 20 things. I mean, it's a great story for Vernon, but let me tell the listeners out there, it's not as difficult as it may seem. When you look at that initial list of actions that need to happen, it could be daunting and it could be overwhelming. And that's part of the reason why I joined the board, is to share this part of the story more than anything else. And when I've talked to Lynn and I've talked to others, I always start by saying, take a deep breath. You're going to do this. If you want to do it, we're going to help you get there. And there's some easy, low-hanging fruit to get the process starting, to get some easy wins under your belt. And I'm going to give you an example. Something very simple that we did in Vernon to kind of launch our sustainable campaign program with our community intimately involved was a residential composting program.
Right.
We were able to get a grant. We were able to offer free residential compost barrels that people can use in their own properties to separate food items, and they can do their own composting to lower the impact on our stream waste disposal. And that was an easy thing. And it was a great way to say, here's how you can participate. Here's how you can earn some points, Town of Vernon, to get started in this process. Here's how you can engage your community in a meaningful way and raise awareness about some of the benefits now and what we're planning for in the future. So that was a very easy win for us, and it was a nice way to kind of get things started. But then, we also had some really big, bold initiatives that took a year. And we said, this is not going to happen in a month. It's not going to happen in 2 months. We're thinking a year from now, which is really how long it took us to get to that initial certification.
Yeah.
For us to plan on. But that I think that's a good place to pause for a moment. But I have so much more I want to share with you on that front, and I really would like to spend some time, at some point in our time together today, talking about the engagement with the community, because that's a major driver for me.
Absolutely. Should be for a communications guy. Engagement is huge. I know that. And it isn't just talking at the town. I'm not telling you anything new, but just for the benefit of some of the people out there who don't realize how important that communication is. You can have all the greatest plans in the world and all the best ideas, best intentions, but if you don't get your community on board, having a sense of ownership, engagement, getting feedback, really involving the community, it can be a struggle. It can turn into maybe not exactly what you had planned in the first place. So that communication is really key. Absolutely, it is. Sure.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Well, just to follow up on something you were saying, I want people to understand that, our certification thresholds are 200 points for bronze and 500 for silver, and only since 2023 we introduced gold level, and that's 750 points. Now, so really, if we'd had gold level certification all from the get-go, Vernon would probably have qualified. You just got to tack on a few things that we have as requirements for gold, like climate leader, that sort of stuff, which I'm sure, Vernon is well on its way to doing. It's just a stellar performance that you should be, applauded for. But you're absolutely right. The entrance into these things are not that high. It's not that difficult. And in many cases, these towns have already done this stuff. They've already, this is a lot of these things are common sense, best practices the towns have already been following or are already following, or they're in the pipeline, because we come to it and say, look, you're doing all this great stuff. We put a kind of a seal of approval on it, but it really is not as daunting a task as it may seem from the get-go.
Jim, if I may interject on that point too, because I think there's a couple of things that I want to make sure on my list to communicate from experience. These are not one-off things. This is not a check the box process. And right. Again, I'm going to be, as I always am, extraordinarily transparent. I will tell you, I went into this process with Sean in the beginning, and I'm thinking, okay, it's a government process. It's a paperwork. We're going to check some boxes. We're going to get our certification. Woohoo. And we're going to be able to
no.
that. Yeah. And it's a good thing. Maybe get some grant money out of it. And I know that sounds very shallow, but this is what I was thinking. Okay, there's going to be some benefit.
Totally valid.
My goodness, what I have learned through this process is that it's so much more deep, meaningful, and there's so much more deeper value than your typical government paper pushing process. Yeah. And that's the part that I really want to communicate, and that's why we're here. I think talking together, and why I was excited to be chosen for the board to share this part of the story. What it meant for me as a town leader going through this process is something I'd like to share. And when I started, I explained it, I figured it was going to be very process and it was, kind of like a simple thing. And, maybe there's some work behind it. But what I realized was that this really created opportunities for me internally in the Town of Vernon organization, to have my departments work more interoperably together, to work more collaboratively on non-traditional things, which was really a great leadership exercise for my department heads, and brought my departments operationally closer together, which has been something that we continue to benefit from back to COVID. These are all transferable skills. And if you can build that capacity during your Sustainable Connecticut, it will serve you well in your day-to-day operations, whether it's responding to something huge like a pandemic like COVID, or just doing your day-to-day work and out in the municipality, whether it's road work or it's your social services work. You're going to have those relationships, and you're going to have those capabilities, and they're going to be strengthened through the Sustainable Connecticut process. Equally as important for me as a town leader is the engagement with the community. I'm always looking for ways, as you mentioned, communication's one of them. But I'm old school. I'm old school, Jim. I like face to face. I like going out and talking to people. Zoom is great, and serves a purpose, but I really enjoy the interaction, the human side of the work that we do, because that's in my mind, that's the essence of government. Is it's about people. You're serving people. It's a public service, and so,
well, especially in a small town, you're up close and personal on that level of government, and there's no way you can't
be successful. You can't be sustainable if you don't want to interact with people. You're 100% right.
Absolutely.
And so that's what drives me personally and professionally. And so this process of going through the sustainable certification opened up new avenues that we didn't have before for a much more deeper, meaningful level of engagement. The composting was one. We did a solarized Vernon. What a wonderful way to educate our residents about the benefits of natural energy from the sun. Save you money on your electric bill, and at the same time help the environment. I mean, it's one thing to go out and say, "Hey, we don't want to pollute the environment, and you shouldn't do this." It's another thing to say, "We're going to help you. We're going to give you the tools to actually make a meaningful impact on the environment, and at the same time save you money and put more money in your pocket." Right. And so like that, those are wonderful, wonderful opportunities for any town leader to embrace and run with, because there's no downside to that, Jim.
No.
It's
money is a legitimate concern, and absolutely budget and resources. It isn't just let's save the planet, though there is a lot of that, and it's important. We can't do anything without that existential issue of saving the planet.
That's right.
We work with towns to we understand the fiscal pressures, the resource allocations, the lack of some resources, whether they're human or fiscal, and these are important issues that have to be addressed along the way, or you're not going to get anything done.
No, you're 100% right, and I'm going to use that solar example again. It's an easy one. We put solar. We solarized Vernon first. We did the municipality. And then we offered it to our discounted solar power to our residents. Yeah. So residents actually benefit twice financially or economically speaking, because they get to save themselves on their own bill. And then the town has a lower energy cost, which obviously is part of the mill rate calculation, which impacts people's taxes. So listen, those are the opportunities I like. It could touch people on a very deep level and a very personal level on multiple layers. If you want to help the environment, great. Environment's not important to you. Well, how about saving some money? Okay, great. But we're still going to help the environment too, by the way. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
Those are the types of wins that I think are very unique, and I think are available to any community that wants to participate in sustainable Connecticut. The other thing I'd like to talk about is, again, I want to make this point clear. Sustainable Connecticut, another thing I learned is it truly you can pick from so many different programs and so many different activities. Again, like you said, your community may have already started some of these. You may already be engaged. You may be thinking about doing some of these things. So you might be pleasantly surprised. It's not like you're adding a whole new slate of work onto it. The Sustainable Connecticut certification may actually provide your organization with the push it needs to revive or to get lift off on some of projects you've been thinking about that you think could be good for your community. Right. And here's the key. It really spans the gamut. It's not just for a segment of the population. It's truly birth through seniorhood. And if you look at what's available, and we've tried to keep it fair and equitable across the board. We didn't want to focus just on one segment of our population. We wanted it to be truly meaningful for everybody, or as many people, as inclusive as we possibly can, because we want people to buy into this. And the only way you're going to do that is if you can be as inclusive as you possibly can in your process.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the winning strategy, to really be as inclusive and outreach as much as possible. Now, as town manager, you have to walk a bit of a tightrope between Republicans and Democrats when it comes to pretty much everything you do. I might assume there might be some little dance there. How has that played out with respect to sustainability issues? Have you found bipartisan agreement, consensus on most of these things, or has that been a challenge?
That's a great question. Obviously, anyone in my role as town administrator, town manager, anyone in a senior executive government position, local, state, or federal, you always have to look at things through political filters because that's the basis of your elected leaders. And so again, I'm glad you asked that. I wasn't expecting that one, but it's a great question because our strategy has been when we looked at our actions that we undertook here in Vernon, when we ran it through our political filter, we run it through a financial filter, we run it through a policy filter, so again, when we say, okay, what's going to be the impact politically, for us, it's always been what's best for people. Because, and I have found this throughout my entire career, if you keep the focus on what's good for people, it usually brings different party affiliations together. It could be a unifying force, and that's exactly what it was. Has there been comments or has there been concerns raised along the way that, is this a political thing? Sure. I mean, that's human nature. People will ask that question. It's inevitably going to happen, and it will inevitably be, I think, a hurdle for any new municipality. They're gonna have to address that. And my strong suggestion would be, and what's worked for us in Vernon throughout these many years that we've been part of this process, certification, recertification. By the way, we are going to go for gold to answer your question before. For us, it's always been keep the focus on the people and the benefit to the people and the benefit to the town, economically, fiscally, policy-wise. And then that way, the politics, everybody, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on or whatever your political affiliation is, everybody, I think, wants to do the right thing for people. They may just have different views on it and different political positions on and how to get there. But at the end of the day, everybody wants to do what's right for people. And that's
why you're there.
Sure. Yeah. And that's why we're here. And so for us, the Sustainable Connecticut has been a politically unifying process. It has brought Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated, independent voters, people of various backgrounds, ethnicities, cultures, different speaking languages. I mean, the list goes on. And so to be able to pull together such a diverse group, politically included, for the common good of the people of the town has been a truly unifying force in Vernon and valuable part of our certification process.
We'll return to our program in just a moment. You've been listening to The Impact, a Sustainable CT podcast. And while you're out there tripping the web fantastic, don't forget to join us on Facebook for some fun and interesting stuff. Guaranteed safe for children and pets. Come on, be our friend, won't you? At facebook.com/sustainableCT. And we, like millions of others, have hopped on the Instagram Threads bandwagon at instagram.com/sustainableCT and threads.net/@sustainableCT. And yes, of course, we're LinkedIn. Search for Sustainable CT from your LinkedIn page, and you'll find us right there, being all LinkedIn and media social. And if you're not yet a subscriber to Actions and Impact, the Sustainable CT newsletter, you could be missing out on some very important information to you, to your organization, and to your town. Accept no substitutes. Do yourself a favor and subscribe today, and you can do that where? At sustainablect.org, of course. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking with Mike Purcaro, town manager of beautiful town of Vernon. We're having a great conversation.
I'm just curious, has anyone else on your show said similar things? I'm hoping there's a trend and people are saying similar things. It's not just me saying these things.
No, there are similar trends. Every town is unique, and it's going to come up. One thing is something more important than the other. something that really worked really well for a town. Other stuff they struggled with. Quite frankly, there are towns in Connecticut that struggle with, say, optimizing for equity.
Yeah.
It's a difficult nut to crack. And as you pointed out, our actions cover such a broad range of issues. I mean, everything under the sun you could imagine. Some are just more difficult than others and more challenging. And that's okay. It's okay to be challenged. It makes you think. It makes you, how can we approach this issue? Housing is a great example. Affordable housing is a real issue, a real problem, not just in Connecticut. It's all across the United States. So there's nothing unique about that. And how each town is responding to that crisis really can be very unique. And each town will approach it differently and find it more difficult. Some will find it much more difficult than others.
Okay.
Our program, if you want to go to our program, we know that there are towns that have resources to bear and towns that don't.
Yep.
And as you say, this is a comprehensive. We don't make it easy. It's not meant to be easy. It's supposed to be, meaningful.
Yeah.
When you're done doing some of these actions, they've had real consequences, positive consequences on the ground for real people. Not every town has the same resources that Vernon does, or West Hartford, or New Haven. So we have to come to these towns, with different support systems, whether that's bring our fellows to work to help the towns, or being ready to just jump in with a lot of support. That's important too. So yeah, no, there's a continuity in these conversations. I have it, but every town really responds to this in their own unique way, which keeps it interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah. I mean, otherwise it'd be the same interview, I guess.
I've looked through your paperwork for certification, and you folks have done so many things. What I'm interested in, what stands out for you as most important, or one of the most important things that have impacted your community? How did you start into certification, and why? What started you out, and where did it lead you?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things was the collaboration and the engagement. You're going to hear me say that repeatedly, and I told Lynn when I first was approached to be on the board. I'm going to tell the story, and I'm going to keep on saying it loud and proud. It's all about collaboration and engagement for me. And it's collaboration internally, as I mentioned earlier in our interview, between departments, and it's collaboration with the community. It's engagement with the community at a very meaningful and valuable level. Not just, hey, we're going to put out a press release announcing this great program. No, this is, hey, we're going to meet, we're going to get people together from different backgrounds, all different diversity backgrounds, economic status, cultures, religions, politics, everything, and we're gonna pick actions that we believe are going to be in the best interest of the community at large, and for our residents, and we're going to use those to unify our efforts, and so that to me has been the biggest thing. I would say, though, one of the cornerstones to our success, not the only, but one of the cornerstones to that in the realm of collaboration has been with our school district.
Yeah.
And sure. I'd love to talk about, you kind of touched on this without saying it, but in today's day and age, with everything being so expensive and the economic crisis, we'll call it that, that we're in at the moment. I think doing more with less, how can sustainable Connecticut help? It's not just dumping more money into a program. You can actually save money. So, we touched on solar, but I'd really love to share how we use Sustainable Connecticut to strengthen our relationship with our school district. That, I think, is extremely unique for Vernon in the level of shared services that we have, part of our Sustainable Connecticut initiative. Any community, looking to go into this, especially now, we were, I think, as a state and as a nation in a very different economic position, several years ago. I think things are very challenging. The price of everything has gone up. taxes are included in many communities. And so any community listening to this or thinking about becoming a sustainable community, they're immediately going to think of, well, is this going to require more money? And this probably isn't the best time to do it. And I would say, no, that's not correct. I would say sustainable Connecticut can be through the collaboration that's gained, through the engagement, can be a wonderful way to find efficiencies in government processes that you can reap financial benefits as well as other benefits from. And again, for us, that cornerstone has been the partnership with our school district. And I say that very strongly because any budget out there, on average, your school district is about 60% on average of your total municipal budget. You know, your general government is about 40%. And so, you know, if there's things that you can partner with your school district on, if you can find efficiencies, if you can look for ways to share services, these are all things we did under the umbrella of Sustainable Connecticut. And we did very well, actually, to the point where we have become a best practice and model community for our shared services program between our municipal government, general government, and our school district. We have literally saved hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars that we can in turn use to lessen the mill rate, impact of taxes, but also reprogram into programs and services that could be very beneficial and have been very beneficial to our residents. And so those are, I think, some key areas. I would also say, though, that there's some things that new municipalities, new organizations, or even those that are going to become recertified or thinking about it, look at what you have done, or look at some small starts for the new groups. In Vernon, for example, in our initial certification, we introduced a My Vernon art program for youth, which uses art to inspire appreciation for and to build a sense of community in our town. And so that was kind of a very easy put your arms around it thing that we built off of for our recertification. And we were like, wow, this really worked out well. We want more of this. And we ended up now doing a arts and culture district. So when, it started small and it kind of spawned big. So that's one concept. And I think that's an important one for, to other communities jumping on board here to think about. It's not just this one off and then you forget about it. No, you could be planting seeds for the future.
Yeah, that's great.
In our community, and now we've got a broader range of partners, a broader range of grant opportunities, a broader range of ways to engage and collaborate with our community, especially in our downtown area. And we're addressing ways to build that sense of community on a much bigger scale. And so I think that's an important component as well, Jim.
Yeah. And a good one. I mean, that's the life of this program. You've hit on it. You really have. You can start small, expand. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Test different things, find something that works and run with it. And if it benefits the community, all the better. That's the idea. That's the concept. Speaking of collaboration, I wanted to ask you, now Vernon is part of the Capital Region Council of Governments, and we work a lot with the COGs for various things. In Connecticut, the COGs essentially act as counties in many respects.
Yes.
What, if anything, has that association meant to you, to the town of Vernon? Are you able to collaborate on any major issues with CapCog or any of the towns regionally around Vernon? Are you collaborating with other municipalities?
Yeah, frequently. I think, again, and I'm using it in more of the literal term, for any community right now to be sustainable without skyrocketing taxes, you have to look for creative and innovative partnerships, and the regional approach has to absolutely be on the table. Whether you are doing regional purchasing to leverage more economic buying power to make your tax dollars go further, get better deals on consumables that the town or Board of Education uses every day. To filling critical positions and services. one of the biggest challenges I think facing all municipalities in the state, frankly, across the nation, is the difficulty in hiring individuals, qualified individuals. It's a very interesting job market, and as a very concrete example of what our Capital Region Council of Governments is doing under the leadership of Matt Hart, who recently took over, is they're identifying where are those critical gaps. Where can the COG be the most beneficial for all communities involved? And they're looking and analyzing and coming up with plans to regionalize building inspection services, because those things have to happen. They can't stop happening. They're looking for ways to regionalize economic development. They're looking for ways to regionalize other day-to-day operations that municipalities are struggling to fill some of these critical needs. So to answer your question again, very, very bluntly, regionalizing where it's appropriate is critically important for the sustainability of any municipality in this economic environment.
Sure. Well, and it's a matter of fact that dirty water and dirty air certainly don't recognize town boundaries. So there's that issue. And working collaboratively usually makes any program you're going to create to address those issues a bit more effective.
Yes.
And sharing resources, like you said, people. There are lots of people associated with, whether it's the COG system or maybe another municipality on your border, that can share wisdom and ideas and experience that, and you with them. Collaboration is key.
Yes, it is.
Pretty
Yes,
damned important. Let me ask you, Mike, what made you want to be on the board of directors? What motivated you there? Or did we just came to you and asked you? Was it a gleam in your eye, or did we hunt you down and beg you to do this?
It was the pay. No, this is 100% voluntary to participate, including being on the board, by the way.
Yes.
So yeah, there and actually I'm glad, all kidding aside, but there's no fee. Anybody listening to this?
No, there's no fee.
This is 100% voluntary. There's no fee to be part of it. And again, I will emphasize the benefits you will get from participating, and I can say from years of being part of this process, can not only bring efficiencies and save you money, but there's other non-monetary benefits that I think are truly priceless in participating. So, but for me, it's really, I want to share the story. I think if every community were to be part of the Sustainable Connecticut Initiative in some way, shape, or form, you don't have to go for the gold. Just be part of it. Get involved. Try it. Look and then reevaluate. That's my message. I'm not here to push anything on anyone. I don't believe that's the role of government, to be that heavy-handed unless it's a matter of life and death. But this is not. This is truly a golden opportunity for municipalities across the state that haven't been part of this process to really look at it. And I think that even just dipping your toe in the water and starting small, you will quickly realize that there are some tremendous benefits to being part of it. Like I said, could be monetarily, but also non-monetarily, to help improve your organization. And really, that to me is the reason why I got involved. I want to share that story, hopefully inspire others, be available at any time to share our experiences. The good things we did, some of the mistakes we made along the way, we'll share it all. We're transparent here. And, that's the best way to learn.
I want to ask you, because we like to know how we can improve. Is there any area you think that we could do better in? We try very hard to streamline our actions and make them understandable and easy to follow. We're not always very successful at that. There are a lot of areas that we continually try to improve upon. Is there some area that you think we could probably do better at? Love to know.
That's an interesting question. There's always areas. Again, I'll say this up front, not to be critical, but this is how I look at my life personally and professionally, and how I lead and manage. Continuous quality improvement, right? So there's always opportunity to look for ways to enhance what works and look at and take hard looks at things that don't work and maybe not do them anymore. So with that concept in mind, I think, and again, kind of what drove me to the board, and hopefully I'll be able to, this will be part of my tenure and legacy on the board here, is being able to share those best practices. And I think that needs to be more of a focus. And so I'm a doer, and that's why I'm on the board. I'm going to talk, and I'm going to be out there, and I want to share these stories with people that are thinking about being part of Sustainable Connecticut. And so I think as an organization, I think we can do a better job. We do a good job. I'm not saying it's bad, but I think we can do a better job at sharing those success stories. And I think if we can do that more effectively and communicate that better and keep the focus on what are the benefits that you can realize from being part of sustainable globally, holistically, because let's face it, there's a finite amount of land, economic resources, and human capital in any municipality, under any administration in any municipality. And carefully managing those resources, to me, is the very essence of sustainability. So there's a need for it. And so I think by telling our stories, by sharing our best practices, by showing the successes that you can that you can achieve through this Sustainable Connecticut certification process, we can also inform and educate our municipalities that yes, there's opportunities to engage and collaborate with the public, but this process of certification will provide a solid framework of these best practices that we can share better to tackle countless other issues that all municipalities have to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. I love that. The interconnectedness of that process. I love hearing that from you. That's so true. And the steps you go through, whether it's in communication or process, can help in a lot of different areas. Even if you didn't really connect those dots to begin with, they end up really being very helpful down the road. Now, I was joking earlier about the long list of stuff you did in your before life, before Vernon, but you really did have some extensive experience in public health administration and at the Connecticut Department of Public Health and at the National Disaster Medical System at HHS too. So when COVID came to town, you must have been completely prepared to deal with that public health crisis. Am I right? Is that how did that go down for you in Vernon at the time?
Thank you for asking that question. Wasn't expecting it, but very, very happy to talk about it. And obviously that actually plays into the sustainability of our community in such a concrete way.
Yeah, excellent.
So, during my tenure at the Department of Public Health, we had a very strong focus on emergency preparedness and response. And just like our board of directors, we had a phenomenal team, just like the staff at Sustainable Connecticut, at the Department of Public Health. We had a wonderful staff, great leadership. So we made significant gains in planning and preparing for a multitude of hazards. And I would say, unfortunately, we also had the real world experiences before COVID and under our belt. For example, if you recall, during my tenure at the Department of Public Health, we dealt with West Nile virus. We dealt with a pandemic influenza. Mm-hmm. We dealt with the first bioterrorism attack with the anthrax incident and the unfortunate loss of Otley Lundgren. We actually named our mobile field hospital as a result of that we purchased, the first of its kind for a state agency, state health department to actually purchase and deploy and operate. And so to answer your question, we had a lot of success and we had a lot of experience going into COVID. But again, I will say the magnitude of COVID, I don't think anybody could have been truly 100% prepared for it. But I think as a state, and certainly the experiences that I had there to bring to Vernon, we were much, much better prepared than most. And Jim, I think that was evident in our response. Vernon was one of the first communities in the state to start a grassroots vaccination program to offer vaccine to people who wanted it. We never forced it on anyone, but if you wanted it, we wanted to do everything in our power to knock down as many barriers as possible to provide access to life-saving vaccine for people who wanted it. Yeah. And some of our work was actually featured nationally by the CDC. And then we ended up forging some truly novel, internationally recognized partnerships with Uber. We were the first organization to partner with Uber to provide free Uber rides to our vaccination clinics.
Oh, really?
And a lot of this was actually featured on the nightly NBC nightly news. And so we were really doing a lot of novel things, not for the attention, but the attention helped inspire others. And I'm going to kind of weave this back and bring it right back to the sustainability component, because what we learn through these experiences is that the more we can share about our successes and our failures, there was a lot of things we did really good, and there was a lot of things that we said, hey, we tried, but it didn't work. Yeah. We wanted to share all of that information and be as transparent as possible. And we were literally sharing these experiences, not only with our neighboring communities and towns and cities, but literally we were getting calls from big cities in Texas and Washington State, across the country, New York, boroughs in New York City with populations greater than the whole town of Vernon. And we're sharing our experiences. And to bring it back home, that's the essence of the Sustainability Connecticut program, is the best practices, what works. And so that mindset, that whole formula for success in dealing with a challenge, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's an economic issue, whether it's a diversity issue, or an inclusivity issue. Those are the same strategies and experiences that we brought to the table for our certification.
Yeah. What's next for you, Mike? Are you just on a personal? Are you going to stick with Vernon for the foreseeable future? You don't have any plans to go anywhere else, I'm assuming, for a while. You're going to.
Vernon's in my blood. It runs through my blood. I lived in Vernon for a little while, and my heart is here. I feel very connected to the Vernon community. I love Vernon. It's a great place to live. It's a great place to work. It's a great place to visit. Yeah. It's a great place to open a business. I would encourage anyone, any listener, if you've never visited Vernon, we've got award-winning rails to trails. We've got some gorgeous, beautiful open spaces, parks that you can visit. And so, I have, my heart is in Vernon, and I feel very connected to this community.
That's great. Well, Mike, we are out of time, and I really appreciate your doing this today. A wonderful conversation, and you've been a great guest. So thank you very much. We're looking forward to working with you on the board for sure.
Same here. Thank you, sir.
You got it. Thank you so much, Mike.
Thanks, man. Take care.
We hope you've enjoyed today's edition of The Impact, a Sustainable CT podcast. As always, this program is recorded, produced, and copyrighted, by Sustainable CT. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for listening. Thank you to our sponsor, Connecticut Green Bank. Thanks again to our friend Mike Purcaro for all his work in Vernon and in support of Sustainable CT. And thanks to everyone for taking local actions that have a statewide impact.